Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship.
So next thing you know, I was up on stage, and I really don't. I don't pull any punches when I'm telling the truth to people, and I thought it went over really well. I kind of figured I was going to be in trouble with the Gestapo because of the lockdown tyranny and the crazy rules that they were trying to imply. But I didn't really care. I've been a subscriber to Rebel News now for about a year, and that's because you guys earned my trust by watching me is at the scenes with the video cameras in your hands, taking the abuse that you take and asking the tough questions. So for $8 a month, like that's worth way more than that. Should be to any patriotic Canadian who doesn't support what's going on out there. It's just it's a terrible thing what's going on. These guys don't give baseless opinions or make up false narratives. You got the camera in your hands and you show what's happening, and then you let the people make their own conclusions from there. And that's the type of reporting we need in Canada. And the fight the fines things just shows how grassroots you guys are, that you would even come up with, like Ezra. I said Ezra could be our prime minister. Like the guy's just amazing what he's done. And so I'll stop there before I sound like a Rebel News groupie.
Mr. Yakubowski is actually a retired OPP sergeant. And he attended a protest and he did speak at the rally. Unfortunately, he was given a summons for attending the rally and is now facing tens of thousands of dollars of fines. At this point, we don't have the Crown's full case, so we don't know exactly what their strategy is or how they want to handle these types of matters. But I can say with certainty that these are obvious charter breaches. Regardless of the reason of attending a protest, the entire spirit of the protest is to seek a political change. And that's exactly what Mr. Yakubowski was doing.
One of the loudest criticisms I hear of the police during the pandemic is, why aren't more cops standing up against the lockdown? We know there are plenty of good cops out there who hate the lockdown. We know they're there, but why aren't they raising their voices? Well, today I'm bringing you the story of a cop who did, or at least a former police officer, a former instructor at a police school who's now a pro-freedom activist. He stood up against the lockdown and he was given a lockdown ticket for his troubles. But the good news is that I have a plan to help him. However, we just can't do these sorts of things without your help. Today you're going to meet Joe Jakubowski. He's a retired Ontario Provincial Police officer from Delhi, Ontario, whom Rebel News is fighting through our Fight the Fines initiative, where we, in partnership with the Democracy Fund, that's a registered Canadian charity, connect people receiving lockdown fines, summonses, infractions, and sometimes even criminal charges in touch with top criminal and civil litigators at no cost to them. You can donate to support that very important civil liberties work at fightthefines.com, and you'll receive a charitable tax receipt for that. Now, back in April, Joe went to a No More Lockdowns rally in Simcoe, Ontario, and after a video of his speech from the rally was posted online, the local OPP detachment, yeah, that's his former police employer, issued him a provincial court summons. This is crazy. And this is a political protest, and this is still a free country with free expression, whether the locker-downer politicians like it or not. So I caught up with Joe from his home in Delhi, Ontario last week to hear his side of the story. Take a listen.
Yes, I'm a retired OPP sergeant. After 30 years, I retired in 2016. So I had quite a varied career around the province and worked in forensic identification quite extensively for a number of years. So of course I took a lot of investigative courses and applied the training, read reams of material on investigative techniques. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because when I retired in 2016, I rededicated my investigative efforts to world politics, including the history of World War II, World War I, the United Nations. Basically, I've been thousands of hours, too many hours, if you ask my wife, investigating every piece of information I could find. Now, of course, there's a lot of garbage information out on the internet, but that's part of being an investigator. You know how to weed through the less credible information and put the pieces of the puzzle together, which is very difficult considering a majority of the pieces of the puzzle are withheld from us common citizens. So you got to kind of pick and choose what you can find and then use some common sense in there to come to a rational conclusion. But it takes a lot of time. And that's why most people, I think, don't have a clue what's going on.
Now, I think that sort of takes us to the day that you received the lockdown tickets. I think that sort of dovetails nicely with some of your investigation work. What were you doing that day?
I was just there with my son and a couple of friends supporting freedom in Simcoe. We had a nice turnout that day. It was one of the first freedom rallies for the No More Lockdowns movement. And we had a lot of people there, and the energy was high. The speakers were good, and I talked to Randy Hillier and mentioned to him. We had communicated before by the phone and text and email, and made him aware that I was there, and made him aware that I'd be willing to go up and say a few words if he had time for me to go up. And he said sure. So next thing you know, I was up on stage, and I really don't. I don't pull any punches when I'm telling the truth to people, and I thought I went over really well. I kind of figured I was going to be in trouble with the Gestapo because of the lockdown tyranny and the crazy rules that they were trying to imply. But I didn't really care because I taught my last 3 years of my career, I taught at the Ontario Police College, and I taught the Constitution Act and the Bill of Rights and the Charter. So I know what the police officers have been taught, and I know what the laws are. So I knew that whatever they gave me wasn't going to be worth the paper it was written on, because it's just all unconstitutional. It's so it's almost ludicrous how unconstitutional it is. So I got up and I said my bit. I didn't speak for quite as long as I'd like to. I was asked to cut it short, but anyways, it went over well. People enjoyed it, and sure enough, they scheduled another No More Lockdowns event in May, I believe it was, in Simcoe. And surprisingly, the week before that event, it came out in the newspaper that 8 of us were being charged for the one that occurred like 2 months earlier. So there are no charges laid until it was announced that there was going to be another No More Lockdown event. And that got saturated in our local fake news, the Simcoe Reformer, misinformer. And basically that scared away everyone, and it was a flop. The next one, it had to be canceled just because of fear, right?
Right.
The government is use these techniques. They're experts at scaring the people. And once the people are afraid, then they're very pliable, as we can see with people walking around with masks on their face. It's just craziness. But anyways. Yeah.
So what were the amounts of your tickets that you received?
I didn't get in a ticket amount because they didn't lay the charge. They only had 30 days to proceed under Part 1. Well, they didn't lay the ticket until after the 30-day period, so they had to give me a Part 3 long form summons to appear in court. So there was no set fine on it. So basically, you could get up to $100,000 from the JP the way they got the system set up if they don't give you a set fine.
Right. Now, we're going to help you with that lockdown ticket. I've already spoken actually to one of the paralegals who's working very hard on your case, Jenna Little. And we're doing this all through the support of the people who donate to Fight the Fines and to the Democracy Fund. I have one final question to ask you, but first I want to ask you this one. Do you have anything to say to the people at home who are donating to help not only you, but to everybody who has sort of been taken into the Fight the Fines pipeline, fight their lockdown tickets, or in your case, a summons that could result in a 6-figure fine?
Yeah, everyone has to. The Great Awakening is coming. You have to start doing a bit of research and do what you can to help fight back against what everyone can see what's happening. They're seeing our freedoms be taken away. They might not know exactly why, because of course the mainstream media is not going to tell them, and maybe they don't have time to do their own investigations. But everyone can sense, I think, deep down that there's something very, very evil happening, not just in Canada, but across the free world. And I've been saying for some time now, it's World War III. You're not going to see tanks in the streets yet, but it's propaganda, it's infiltration of important positions, and it's infiltration of the education system, the media. It's just it's cyber war. It's the new modern warfare. So all I'm saying to people is that there's so much going on that you don't understand because you haven't had the time and you've been lied to. So once you start to see what the truth is, then you got to do what you can to help fight back. Supporting Rebel News, who gets out there on the ground with the cameras, right in the thick of it. I have so much admiration for so many of your people who go into these hostile environments armed with nothing but a camera and take the abuse that you do, and the disgust I feel of the way our police are behaving out there. Not all our police. I'm a member of Police on Guard for Thee, great organization. Anyone that wants to see good police officers can check that out. But what's happening with our police is just it's nauseating, really. And so supporting organizations like Rebel News that gets out there on the ground and actually helps the people and shows the people they're not. These guys don't give baseless opinions or make up false narratives. You got the camera in your hands and you show what's happening, and then you let the people make their own conclusions from there. And that's the type of reporting we need in Canada. And the Fight the Fines things just shows how grassroots you guys are, that you would even come up with, like Ezra. I said Ezra should be our prime minister. Like the guy's just amazing what he's done. And so I'll stop there before I sound like a Rebel News groupie. But I'm just being honest. I just tell it like I see it, and that's the way I see it. Yeah.
Well, we couldn't do any of what we do without our supporters, and particularly Fight the Fines. I mean, it's such a huge thing that we're doing. We have well over 2,000 people, businesses, pastors that we're helping through Fight the Fines. We basically started a civil liberties organization from the ground up because we said, we got to do something. Nobody else is doing anything.
Exactly.
And so we couldn't do it without all the people at home who are saying, you know what, I haven't received a lockdown ticket, but boy, I need to get involved in the fight to fight back, like, as you say. So, I mean, without those people, none of this could be possible.
Yeah, I've never even subscribed to any news agencies before because they're also damn corrupt. But I've been a subscriber to Rebel News now for about a year. And that's because you guys earned my trust by watching you at the scenes with the video cameras in your hands, taking the abuse that you take and asking the tough questions. So for $8 a month, like that's worth way more than that. Should be to any patriotic Canadian who doesn't support what's going on out there. It's just it's a terrible thing what's going on. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel, but we don't have time to get into that, I'm sure. But there is a lot of great things happening out there right now. Just to tell people. I'm banned from Facebook and Twitter right now, so I can't share any information with anyone on that. But in another 30 days, if you want to look me up on Facebook or Twitter, I'm always sharing what information I find and what evidence I find to support my opinions.
Now, Joe, before I let you go, because I think you have a very unique perspective on this as a former police officer, somebody who taught other cops. What do you think is going on in policing? Because not all cops are bad. I have police officers in my family who say, I don't want any part of enforcing the lockdown. But there are some who are very eagerly enforcing the lockdown, aggressively enforcing the lockdown. What is going on? Because I don't think, like, as you point out, you taught cops what their job is with regard to protecting rights. But we've seen in so many cases a complete abandonment of those lessons.
And cops are just like any other, they're just people, right? And people are very susceptible to power of suggestion, peer pressure. Look at the people that wear face diapers when they don't believe in it. They don't want to wear them, but they wear them because, well, everyone's wearing them, right?
Right.
So it's the peer pressure. It goes right back to like when you're back in elementary school and the peer pressure of the other kids, right? But it's the same thing with adults. So and it's the same thing in policing. You got to realize the upper echelons of policing. You don't become a leader in policing at the high levels in the white shirts unless you got a lot of political connections, and they're working every day with the politicians. So the dictates are coming from the top, and you're in a paramilitary environment where rank structure is like next to godly, and the same as military, right? And that obedience without question is required for high risk situations where you got to work as a team, and it has to happen. There's no time to discuss it. You've got to follow those orders because everyone's life depends on it. So you're so indoctrinated with following orders, and I've got so many friends that that are still in policing and or ex-friends, I guess now, because I've lost quite a few by telling the truth, but they won't even, these are supposed to be trained investigators with decades of police experience, and they don't investigate world politics. They don't investigate COVID. They don't investigate these injections. They just blindly follow what the government tells them through the media. Like it's like it's sort of like a Jonestown type thing. It's just cult mentality, and if there's one thing we learn at the end of all this, I hope it's how to protect the people that are more susceptible to this sort of control in the future. Because we see it every day. You can't watch TV. You watch advertising on TV. It's all about mind control, and that's how they control you, is through the media, through the TV shows, through entertainment industry, through the music industry, just constantly planting these seeds into people's brains. And that's why the biggest thing that has to happen is the mainstream media has to be shut down. These lies have to be stopped, the false narratives. People will never awaken as long as they've got their television in their ear, right in their living room, repeating nonsense to them. Like CBC should be all rounded up and taken off to jail somewhere. Like that's crimes against humanity, what they're doing. The mind, look at the elder abuse, the minds of the elders, the children.
Yeah.
Our children are never going to get over this. They're never going to get over this. Remember when we were kids, we were afraid of the monsters under the bed, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now they got their parents telling them there's some COVID monster out there, and they got to wear a mask and stay away from people or they're going to die from it.
Yeah, they're being told by their parents that their friends are the monsters who will kill them by spreading COVID. Yeah.
And this injection, my God, we don't have the time, but this is poison.
Yeah.
Do some research, people.
Yeah.
Graphene oxide. At least look up the definition of graphene oxide, if nothing else. And spike proteins. And look up what spike proteins do to your body. Blood clots. Because a lot of people are getting very sick and a lot of people are dying around the world from it. This is, people need to pay attention. This isn't life as normal anymore. You start scratching the surface. This is much, much more, much more.
Joe was sworn to uphold the civil liberties of Canadians, to defend our rights and our freedoms. And even though he's retired from the force now, Joe still takes that oath very seriously. As Canadians, we have a right to protest in the public square. We have a right to protest bad government policies. That's what free expression and free association are all about. And those very important rights don't go away because of a largely entirely survivable virus. Now, I caught up with Jenna Little. She's our Fight the Fines paralegal for an update on Joe's case. Take a listen.
Mr. Yakubowski is actually a retired OPP sergeant, and he attended a protest and he did speak at the rally. Unfortunately, he was given a summons for attending the rally, and is now facing tens of thousands of dollars of fines. At this point, we don't have the Crown's full case, so we don't know exactly what their strategy is or how they want to handle these types of matters. But I can say with certainty that these are obvious charter breaches. Regardless of the reason of attending a protest, the entire spirit of the protest is to seek a political change. And that's exactly what Mr. Yakubowski was doing. And this isn't the first time that we've seen a police officer or retired police officers speak out against these lockdown measures. In fact, there was a motion that went around several months ago with the chiefs of police, many of them from across Ontario, basically saying that they refused to stop people in the streets and they refused to enforce COVID laws to the extent that the government wanted them to do. So this isn't the first time that we've seen somebody in a position of power, a position of formal power, retired or not, be penalized and charged and facing hefty fines for simply exercising their rights.
And I think for the public on the outside looking in, they're saying, why aren't cops speaking up? Why they're sworn to protect our civil liberties. So why aren't they speaking up? Well, I suppose this answers the question. When they do, they get tickets.
They do. We might remember a little while ago, there was a Peel Regional officer who was outside of Huff Gym in Mississauga, who was pictured hugging and colluding with the people who were protesting outside of the gym. And I don't believe he got in any type of formal trouble, but the social stigma is very bad. And that, of course, went viral. And then we face people potentially losing their jobs or having a stain on their career because they've simply done what they feel is right morally. So I think that's also part of the issue, is that they don't want to sacrifice their careers. And then for some of them, they take it to the very far end of going to a protest or organizing or hosting or speaking at a protest, versus officers who simply don't give tickets because they don't think that it's necessary.
With so much of the police overreach we've witnessed during the pandemic, it's very important to remember that there are still good ones left out there. Some of those good cops are still in uniform, and some of them are retired like Joe, fighting to remind the officers still in uniform of their oath, fighting for the reputation of the forces they used to serve, and so that the public can still have trust in those sworn to protect them. That's why we must help Joe fight his lockdown ticket in court, and we're going to make sure that it doesn't cost him a dime. If you'd like to help us help Joe and approximately 2,200 other severely normal Canadians fight their lockdown tickets in court at no cost to them, please donate today at fightthefines.com. And good news, all donations there now qualify for a charitable tax receipt through the registered Canadian charity that we work with, the Democracy Fund. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. There are still good cops out there, and Joe Jakubowski is fighting to remind them of their oath. If you'd like to help us help Joe fight the lockdown ticket he received for standing up for the rights and freedoms of Canadians, please donate today at fightthefines.com. At that initiative, we're helping approximately 2,200 Canadians fight their lockdown tickets in court. We're doing this all through a partnership with the registered Canadian charity, the Democracy Fund.